the time we have remaining, we will do the diploma options discussion.
There are three different policies that are being brought forward to the school board for revision. One of them has slightly more revisions, and a couple of them have very, very minor revisions. And I can just show you a brief sample about what the revisions are so that you can be aware of them. Let me, okay. Okay, so one of the items is a policy on traumatic brain injury, medical, and psychological illnesses. There's been a great deal of work being put in this for the past maybe almost 2 years, as there's been a lot more attention being paid to concussion and a variety of other brain injuries. There's a phrase that we're using, it's called return to learn. If students are taken away from the learning because of brain injury, concussion, medical, or other psychological illnesses, having an appropriate plan for a reasonable and gradual return to learning is needed. And in the past policy that addressed this, most of the text in the policy was addressing concussions that were due to sports injuries. And indeed, sports injuries are the source for many concussions. However, as we're learning a lot more about the brain and a variety of other types of illnesses, or looking at the whole child philosophy about children, there's much more than sports injuries that could be contributing to a student having a concussion or having to be out of school for a period of time. So part of the Code of Virginia has been updated, and every time the Virginia Code gets updated on something, all of the school systems across the Commonwealth have to go and update their policies, so this is a part of the process. And I'd like to show a sample of what the policy draft looks like. And this, show it in a little bit of a larger, okay. We're scrolling down. So this is available for information that is being shared with the school board for revising. I can't really get a side-by-side comparison, but for some who may or may not be aware, that if you want to find out anything about an APS policy, if you go to the APS website and go over to school board, right up here, go down to policies. These policies actually, I believe, fall under student services, and this one was 25-3.5. So the policy as it exists right now is right in here under students and concussions. And for some who are familiar with this, the column on the left is right over here are the policies enacted by the school board. Very often they cite regulatory background and why a policy is necessary. The column on the right, many policies have a mirroring PIP, as we call it, or policy implementation procedure, which describes how a policy will actually be carried out by the school system. For right now, the school board is being asked to reconsider the policy. So this document indicates the way that the policy is described right now. And very often, right in this section, it refers to, it discusses things that are concussions related to sports injuries, which is a very common source. The revised policy adds a lot more detail of other sources of concussion, paying attention to symptoms of concussion and best practices as we know them today, compared to even a few years ago, for how to deal with concussions. But it also addresses medical illnesses and psychological or psychiatric illnesses which may cause a student to be out of school for a period of time. One of the things things, as we know, that if a student has had to be out or have a reduced workload for, as an accommodation, when they are being brought back or returning to learn, the process needs to be done gradually. You can't just go from 0 to 60 and expect a student to be able to ramp up just like that. We need to be preparing students for the future very well, but doing it in a kind and gentle way. So that's one of the policies that is up for revision with the school board. Let me take a look at the next one is, this is, oh, that's it. This one is actually a very brief one. So this policy, in the original policy, which I can show you, it just showed just the one sentence up on the top. And it basically indicates that there is an expectation for cooperation with the court. What's been added is the area that's in blue, which represents all of the background regulations that support what the policy is. So the only change happening with this policy is that the documentation of what supports the policy. The policy itself is actually a one-line policy. The policy is not changing. This one is just for reference to go back. Let's see. Okay, so cooperation with juvenile court. This is the actual policy itself. It's just a one-line sentence, and the only thing that's being added and updated is the regulatory statutes that support the policy. Other than that, nothing is substantively changing with the policy. The third one is meeting the needs of the whole child, and
So this is a whole different policy? This is the third policy?
This is the third one. I apologize. This is a third policy, and there is an existing policy with this, but trying to get it to be a little bit smaller so you can see it. Okay. This paragraph or section right here under where it says meet the needs of a whole child, carrying over here, this is added that was not existing in the original policy. What I can do is pull up the original policy to take a look.
So you have the new suggested ones, like in a Word document or a PDF?
Yes.
That are gonna go before the school board on the 29th?
So these are, my understanding is that these are being shared for information, and then they'll be discussed, and then this is actually from the Department or the Office of Student Services, and trying to locate what the code is for this one.
Yeah, there's no number.
I apologize for not having done the homework and have looked up the appropriate code. I should be able to jump right to it.
Was it the support for students? Right back to-
It may be. This section right here where it says meet the needs of the whole child right here was added. The original policy had this introductory paragraph at the top, and then safety and student behavior. And again, I apologize that I should have looked up the right code to be able to know.
That doesn't look like the same. That's
It
wellness.
It is not the same. So there's.
Can we go back to the one that's gonna go before the school board next week?
That's all three of them, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, let's go through one.
Okay. I am happy to be able to entertain any questions or comments regarding any of these particular to Dr. Wilkes and Dr. Newton, and be able to certainly get any responses back to ASEC.
Ron?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I have a question. Last spring, we had Dr. Wilkes here talking about the locally awarded verified credit policy. And she'd indicated that that was also on the list of policies that were gonna be reviewed by the board. But I haven't heard anything about that.
So I can share with you that we recently sat down with Dr. Michael Korf, who is retired from APS and is now brought back as a consultant. He is going to be working on a at least like 6 month or longer review of all of the policies and PIPs or implementation procedures under student services, which are all the ones that are beginning with 25 for revisions. Some of the revisions include adding the regulatory background, others include minor typo corrections, and others include anything that's behind the times for the Virginia Code that needs updating. Some are very minor revisions, other ones are more substantive, lengthy revisions. So during the course of this school year, all of the student services and special education policies and PIPs are going to be reviewed. To do all of them at one time altogether is a little bit too much. So in some chunks, going along a few a month at a time is the procedure that they're looking at. So that one that you're referencing, it may not be in this batch right here, but if it is one of the ones in certain services, it'll be coming out later in the school year.
So they're
So I
just,
say stay tuned.
Right, but we had some substantive concerns, I mean, as a committee, that I think we probably maybe need to put into a letter and send to the board.
What was that one again?
It's the locally awarded verified credit that it was released by Department of Instruction with really no input from this committee, even though it deals exclusively with special education students.
So
It's just simply impracticable the way it's written.
we are actually going to be touching on that a little bit in the diploma options because it's relevant for that. And that policy and implementation procedure fall in the Department of Instruction. But just because it's not in student services doesn't mean that it is not able to be reviewed, because if we think that there's a concern about a policy in any of the areas, they're certainly able to be brought up for discussion or for review or revision. But it is that we're on a schedule that every policy in student services and special education are all going to be reviewed, whether they need it or not, just as a general checkup. We certainly
so
can
that's
review
anything that starts with the 25, is all coming up now.
Anything with the 25 is going to be coming up now. So anything along in all of the ones in this section are all going to be reviewed during the course of this year. Some may have very minor, if any, adjustments, and some may have some more significant adjustments. And other areas such as instruction, human resources, finance, they're going to be going through some similar processes in future years. Now, of course, when something big comes up that needs a revision in a certain area, we don't have to wait for this cycle for that year's, group to come up. There are things that can be brought up earlier.
Yeah, well,
Because we've been talking about ATSS for a while, and we were told that it can't come up till it's supposed to come up.
well, more importantly, like, this is these three are going next week for the board, so this is kind of, I don't feel like we had a lot of time as a committee to actually respond and see these. So what was Brenda's guidance to that? Like, what does she want from us? That we just to say that we saw them, or did they want substantial, feedback on them?
She called me this afternoon, and just
This wasn't
basically,
even on the agenda.
right, because it wasn't on the agenda, and, her directive from the school board was that they are going to ask her, did you review these with your advisory committees? And so her two advisory committees are the Student Services Committee and the ASEC. And so, was there ample time for us to review them? Because the school board is going to ask her that question.
So we'll be getting some writing then, I assume, to review?
So that is a very good question. And I was asked to be able to share these this evening, and I'm able to go and share. Obviously, the original versions that are available online are there. Clearly, the one about cooperation with the courts. There are no changes in the policy itself, it's just the regulations behind it. The other two documents do have some alterations in the text. We can be able to provide a copy of the draft that is being proposed and compare it side by side with the version that is already out there. We can make that available certainly. So this just, the latest version of this draft just came to me today, although I know it's been in process for over a year and a half right now. There's been a lot of work being.
Yeah, we just need to see the marked up version, or the one side by side.
Or just the word that's going forward, and we can,
Right.
I mean, I don't even know if I care about what the changes are, it's like what the current policy will read like now.
I think it's relevant to see what they've taken out.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple, so I definitely think we'd like them in writing, I don't think tonight counts as us having reviewed them.
Yeah, this is a core function of ASEC, and we're supposed to
Yeah.
provide recommendations
Yeah, I mean,
for
we
our
need to even-
policies, and if we, this is the first time we've had notice that the entire 25, section 25 is under review this year. Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I think
several
I have-
months to review
I think I
everything.
have,
This is crazy.
Yeah, and I have comments on all of them, just, I mean, even the one liner is,
Why is it a one?
it's a statement, it says.
Why is it a one liner?
Yeah.
That students are
And
best
if that's
supported, it
yours,
doesn't say anything about Arlington encouraging that support, it just says they're
Yeah.
best supported, it's a, so, I won't get into it, but I think, let's, I mean, I'll send an email to Brenda to be on, to be clear that I don't think that these are reviewed, we're aware that there's a review going on. and
You
that
tried, Paul.
For the first time.
And then,
No, we are all working together. on
No, I
this.
know.
And clearly, I understand if I were sitting in your seat right there, seeing it for the first time, without having a side-by-side comparison,
Yeah.
it would certainly be more helpful to be able to have that.
Yeah.
No doubt.
okay, so that's, like, we'll get those in writing, and then, as a committee, we'll figure out
How we wanna
how we can.
consolidate any
Yeah,
input,
before next
approval,
week.
whatever.
So is my understanding, is this one guy who's revising all of these and then putting it out toward these different committees?
Nick, I don't know, this is the first time I
No,
heard
so
of it.
he is a consultant assisting the staff in each department or in each office with some ways that they may be able to go in. Wendy, go ahead, please.
Well, no, it's just, my understanding of Michael Kors role is like to go through them all, which ones, just kind of the obvious things. This one hasn't been reviewed for 6 years, and they're supposed to be reviewed every other year, flag that, make sure.
I think it's every 5 years is what
And check,
Brenda said,
whatever
yeah.
the rules are around that,
Yeah.
he's checking to make sure that things are up to date according to what they're supposed to be. And then checking on the legislation, like, is that the most recent thing? If not, what do we do? It's still on the departments to say, this is what, the policy needs to say, or this is, it's
Okay, so
on us.
my next
So
question.
he's not writing policy. for
He's not making
department.
wholesale changes all on his own.
No.
So my last question is there any parent involvement in this other than the committee reviews that after it's essentially been written? Is there any parent involvement, or can there be?
I think that there is always,
With the input at any point, or are you just writing it?
I think it may be different from policy to policy. I know I was involved with the family and community engagement development of that policy and that implementation plan, and that was a very comprehensive group that was very well represented, parents and staff together, so, and community members too, so.
In ASAC, I know, like, when we recommended, an ATSS policy, I mean, we were, we passed things back and forth, and I don't know how many people on this committee, like, actually saw them, but I think they circulated it to give feedback, and it got marked up, but then it got kind of caught up into this process. I know that they started with HR because they were the least number of policies, and the school board can only take as information items, 3 or 4 at a time, and then they wait 2 weeks and they approve them. But, they have hundreds of policies to do, but I guess I also wanted to make the comment that, the school board has to get involved with that left column, the school board adoption date on the policy, but then the PIP, to me, is where the meat of everything is. It's how are you going to implement this? And that's where the school board's not involved at all. That's the assistant superintendents and the superintendents write the PIPs and get those approval. So it's good to have the policy correct, but, you know, a lot of things get interpreted in those PIPs, so.
It'd be helpful to get a status on the ATSS policy, because it disappeared last April, and it's again.
Just budget advisory committee, the school board is trying to do this in every committee, and our experience on the budget advisory committee is just, at least from my perspective, same as these three. I would not have any objection to putting the regulatory sites, old child, and the updated concussion information. It just seems like it would be, it serves the school board and the school division best. If the process isn't, if there's enough, lead time in the process, so that we don't get concerned about major policy changes, because there are sometimes significant policy changes. So the context is coming in every committee that I've seen, and certainly the budget, they've been trying to rewrite all these. I just think it's smart to just give that little extra time, because the substance on this, ATSS might be different, but the substance on this, I don't think anybody's gonna have any objection to. It's just, why get caught up in the process on, at least that's the,
Yep. Can't argue with that.
Okay, so